Hello, students. First thing, I wanted to create a video that shows you how to use Google Slides. And I'll go through maybe not everything, but certainly the most important things. I want to encourage you to always to play and try buttons. There's always an undo button, and you can always undo the mistakes you make. So I recommend that you be willing to press buttons and see what happens. Okay. So I definitely want to focus on some of those majors so that you can for sure be able to do that. Also, if you hit the pin button on your shared screen, then you will be able to keep that as your main screen. Okay. Um, so let's jump straight to it. If you find a spot in your Google Drive where you want to create this folder, I always encourage organizing your Google Drive as you go. Hit the plus button and then goes down here to Google Slides. And as soon as you click on this, it'll open up a new one. And this is the presentation I'm working with right now. It's untitled. Okay. And when you get into here, essentially, you will be, oh, I think I might not be sharing my screen properly. Yes, I am. I am sharing my screen properly. Excellent. You change the name right here, whatever you want to call it. I'll call it practice. Okay. And there's a theme bar that comes up right away. And I do recommend that you choose a theme. And that'll just help students stay focused on the learning of the content of your slides rather than, the fact that fonts change all the time. It's just less distracting. So the slides and the themes that they have are pretty good. Definitely use them a lot. But you could also import a theme, and that allows you to go into all the other presentations that you have in your drive and then choose one of those themes if you want to, and then that adds that to your current presentation. I think I chose one of these at the top, one of these here, and then I selected that and included it. Okay, just click on it there, import, and then your entire presentation will follow that theme as you add it. Notice when I hit the little down arrow beside the plus, all the theme is applied to each new slide that I'm given or want to create. Okay, so let's start going through this. You can certainly close that when you don't need it. Most of these buttons across this bar are the ones you end up using most often. Of course, this plus here and down arrow will add whichever type of slide you want to use. You click that and choose it, and it'll insert it on the left-hand side. Be aware that you can click on any of these little guys and move them around. They don't have to be in this order. This is definitely all something you can manipulate. This is one of my favorite buttons, undo. Whenever you create something, you make a mistake, you hit undo and it'll put it back the way it was, which is a wonderful thing. Redo, same thing, it'll put whatever you did or you undid and you want to bring back, it brings it back. Those two buttons are very common. We do print things from time to time. That's pretty straightforward. This paint brush doesn't appear until you actually have something that you can paint. I clicked on a title box here, so now I can actually paint it, and it allows me. It's not actually doing anything, so I don't actually use that tool very often, but let's not worry about it. That said, you can zoom in and out. You'll probably often use that. This is the pointer tool. Whenever you selected something and you want to go back to something new, just click on this pointer. It allows you to move that around. If you want to add a new text box to something, this is how you do it. Just click that little T button and then you can type inside those text boxes. If you want to insert a picture, you just click on here. You can either upload it from your computer, search the web, your Google Drive, photos. I don't often use that. Or by URL, which means if you find the URL of a picture online, you can just copy that address, click there, paste, and it'll insert it directly. And then, of course, if you have your camera, you can also use your camera to insert a picture. Search the web is probably one of the ones you use most often. And so it opens up this explore bar. That's what this little, I'm not sure what symbol, star symbol with Explore down here is. If you ever click that, it'll open this sidebar up too. And then you can just find, any picture you want. And then you might click it and drag it in. Okay. And I like to do this a lot. Whenever I drag something in, I usually put a border around it. It just kind of makes it look like a frame. You can, of course, change it to dots if you want to. Most of the time, I just leave it as solid. You can certainly change its color as well if you want to. That doesn't often make it look better unless it's kind of black, but that's personal preference. And then that's pictures. I also want to point out this format option here. Whenever you're bringing anything in, you always have this format option. I use it extensively, and particularly this drop-down shadow. I often make this go to 50 and then over here to 7 just because I think it looks good. And then notice how it puts that little shadow around it. I think it's a cool little feature. So that's pictures. You can always have any kind of shape that you can bring into your document, and you can change the background color of it if you need to. You can even make it transparent so it's see-through. You can change the line color and the thickness of those lines, and again, dots, what have you, if you like any of those kinds of shapes. Probably the most common shapes people use are these bubble thinking ones are often used by people, and then you can type in those ones as well. And you can say different things. So those are really good ones. Moving along here, we got the arrow one. I often use the arrow one or the line. You can do an elbow connector, curve connectors. You just play with this one. You can even scribble on your screen, have kids color things or draw things if you like. It's a little bit crude to use a mouse to do that, but it still works. So you can definitely use those functions if you need to. I certainly use the arrow a lot, arrow tools. So I just drew an arrow, make it whatever color you want. You can certainly make it a lot thicker. Choose a different arrowhead if you want, or what have you. There's a lot of different ones to choose from. And then, yeah, that's the arrow tools essentially, and the drawing tools. This one here is a comment tool, so you can pick any item. The words, a picture, the arrow, even the scribbles, and you can hit the comment tool and make a direct comment. You are a wonderful artist. Right? And then comment on that. And if you allow other people to have comment rights, they can do that too. They can click on anything and make a comment about it. And so when I'm clicking on this, then you notice that that scribble that I attached it to is also what is highlighted. All right, so moving right along, background, I often change the background. Sometimes I'll put an image in there, and you can get those from the web or all over the place, your Google Drive, wherever you need to, or upload. I'm often changing the color to a background, and you can definitely do that too, and reset theme or add a theme through this approach too, if you want to. And then layout. This is a similar button here as this one, but you can essentially change and add a layout to the slide you're in. Once I have a layout, I don't often switch it, but you can. And then theme, we already covered at the beginning, and then transitions. And transitions, you can put choose every object in here and apply a transition, like it'll fade in or fade out. Personally, I don't use these tools at all. I find it actually becomes a big distraction from the learning for my students, so I don't use them at all. But you can definitely choose any one of these items on here and then apply and add an animation of any kind that you'd want, fly in, fly up, on click or whatever, and then how fast you want it to go. And you hit play, and it will show you when you click what happens to that animation. But again, I don't find this is really useful for kids to play with and bring interest to their work, but I don't find this to be a very helpful tool when it comes to teachers creating content for students. But there is times where it can be useful. Okay, so that's the main bar there. Now I want to just jump through all the different choices here in the menu bar. Okay, File has a few important things. I'm often making copies of work, especially when other teachers or students, particularly teachers, if they share something with me, I'm often making my own copy. If I make my own copy, that means I become the owner of the copy, and only I can then make changes to it. So that's a very important feature. I don't often import slides, but you can import them from other places. You can just open. If you're done with this one and you want to open a new slide, you can certainly do this feature. I often just do the shortcut of just jumping to my open tab here and then finding what I want and opening it that way. But there's always more than one way to do things in Google. And then new, if you want to create a new document, any of the types, drawing forms, you can do that right from this as well. And there's also the sharing feature, but I always just jump over to this orange share. So there's more than one way to do things in Google. Email, this is basically allows you to, take this document and directly email to somebody if you want to, and it attaches it to them in the email. Notice here that it has an automatic feature where it'll turn into a PDF or a PowerPoint or plain text. So this will not share the document with you. It'll create a version of it that will get sent in the email. Okay, that's important to know. And then going down the list, download, I often use this. This will turn your PowerPoint into a PDF, which is a portable document format. This is not something anyone will be able to edit once you do this. But there are, you can turn it into a PowerPoint if you want to use this as in a Microsoft PowerPoint environment on your desktop. That's also an option. But I'm often doing this. I'm often turning each slide into a JPEG so then I can share it as a picture where nobody's going to edit it. PNG is the same thing. It's a picture file. Nobody will be able to edit it unless they have fancy software to do so. And then scalable vector graphics, it's a picture as well, but I'm usually dealing with these two only. Okay. I guess if your students are, in using Chromebooks and perhaps Wi-Fi isn't very good, you might want to be able to make your documents the students are working on available offline. You would have to choose this and turn it on. That's not something I have to deal with, but perhaps you might, so you might want to consider that. That would be a nice, helpful tool in your work environment. Version history is really valuable, especially when I'm having students collaborate on one document and share, and that's the real power with Google, is they can, as many students as you want can work on one document at one time, but the potential for that as they start messing with each other's work, that'll be an ongoing conversation I'm sure we have in the next 2 weeks. But with version history, you can go back to a version where it wasn't damaged or had problems with it, and bring that version back. So that's a really helpful tool. The other thing is it also tells you who changed it. So let's say somebody came and deleted all the slides, excuse me, then you can go back and find out who did delete all those slides, and it'll be attached to them. Okay. You could rename that document, but you could also just click on here and rename it. So that would not be a quick way. You can move where the file is in Google Drive. So that's a cool little tool, but it's the same button as this one here. It's the same move tool. Okay. You'd probably just use a shortcut. Add shortcut to Drive. Now, if you were working on a collaborative document that did not belong to you, but you wanted a copy of that on your drive, you'd click that and tell it where to go into your drive and organize it. It's still owned by the other person, but you have access to it directly in your drive wherever you put it. Move to trash is kind of self-explanatory. One of the biggest, if I could highlight a really huge tool, is this publish to web. I use this all the time. It basically just allows this PowerPoint or Google slide to be turned into a website, essentially. And so you have two choices. You have link or embed. Embed is to kind of put that website or this website into another website, and there's value there, but most of the time I'm just sharing links. And so I would not change anything here. You only need to change that if you're actually clicking these two on, but if you're not clicking those on, then this doesn't matter. It'll always just stay on the first slide unless you click those two. And then down here, you would probably want, for your students, this will automatically be on, but for you as a teacher, you would have a choice here. Yeah, but you'd probably want to turn that on so that this website would only be available within the ministry. Okay, and then you hit publish, say okay, and then it creates this website. Now this is website, you'd control C, copy it, and then, or right click and copy it. And then you'd go onto, Google Classroom or new tab and open that up as a website. Just paste it into the Omni bar there, and then sure enough, up comes our fancy website that we're creating, and it's not messy. It's just what the kids need to see, and that's why I use it so much. Okay, going back to it, that was that link. I'm going to stop publishing because I don't really need that at this point, but it's what it is. Big, very important tool. And then looking a little bit below, there's some document details. It just tells you how big it is, who owns it, when it was created, maybe the folder location, which can be helpful at times if you want to help having trouble finding it. You could also do a Google search for the name in Google Drive. And then language, I tend to not change that. But another big one here is definitely page setup. I use this a lot. It's often set to 16 and 9. And I believe those are inches. So that's a pretty big canvas to work with. But there's some standard ones. Custom, whenever I go to custom, I'm only doing that one 8.5 by 11. That is the size of a piece of paper. And so when I want what I'm working on to look like a piece of paper, then I will change it to this. And then when I hit print on the photocopier, then it'll come out like an exact piece of paper. So I do use that a fair bit. So that was under File, Page Setup, and I definitely recommend you play with that. But for our purposes now, I'm going to leave it as widescreen there. Okay. Anything else down there? Printer settings and preview, that's pretty straightforward, and print. Most of us have probably done these print settings. Of course, you have a few choices there. Download as a PDF, you may want that. Print. Includes skip slides. I don't ever skip slides. If I want to skip slide, I don't use it. Hide background, so on. That might be helpful when you don't want to use much ink. That might actually be helpful. So they just get the text that you actually create, and it's less complicated for the printer to be able to print, that sort of thing. So that's kind of a neat tool. All right, I'll close that preview. So that's the first drop-down menu. The next one is edit, undo, redo. There's those shortcuts, copy, paste. I'll make you aware of there's a keyboard shortcut for everything. I often use Control A for select all, and then, cut, copy, paste, Control X, Control C, Control V. So I use those often. If you like that, then feel free to try and learn those as well. But notice as I click on the next one, there's keyboard shortcuts for everything, but I certainly don't use them for everything. You can present here. Of course, this is the same as the present tool over here. And then you, of course, have some choices of how you present from the beginning or present view. There is a present on another screen. If you actually had some, like a smart board or a projector or something like that available, you could do that as well. I often use that feature with our iPads as well. And then under view, motion, we talked about that and how we can bring motion to our objects. Not something I use often, but certainly play with that so you understand what it is, because your students will use it and they love that stuff. Theme builder, I've actually never done this one. I think that's a new feature. It looks like you get to play with how your theme ends up playing out, but not a huge feature that I've ever played with or need to. Google constantly updates their stuff, and we're glad they do, but that also means there's always learning to be done. Okay, grid view. This basically just lets you look at all your slides in front of you. I don't use this very often, so I would just leave that off, and I just scroll through my slides on the left-hand side here as needed. But to each their own. You would also have zoom, so you could bring things in and out. show ruler, that's this guy at the top. If you don't like the ruler, it can disappear, but personally I don't mind it being there. It doesn't take up any space in the left top and left hand side there. And then snap to grid. Doesn't do anything. Not sure what it refers to. But there's also guides, and I'm not sure what I think they mean when you move things, it will actually move it around. It's not a feature that I actually use, so I don't think you'd ever need to worry about it. And then show speaker notes. These are the speaker notes down here. I do use them from time to time, sometimes putting links in there or little notes for myself. These are things that nobody sees but the presenters. You can even print out notes for students. That might be really handy. They can actually write their script out, and then it might help them to be able to do their presentations. So you can just, write in there. And then full screen. This just make sure it goes straight to full screen, which I guess can be helpful. But notice I lost my bar at the top there. Okay, maybe I can hit escape. There you go. I hit escape, and now the name and these title bars come back. Okay, so I guess it makes it larger when you're presenting, essentially, which can be handy. So show it to you again. Just basically remove some of that information there, and then hitting escape button on the keyboard brings it back. Okay, insert. I'm in here all the time, including images here. You can upload from your computer. I think I already showed you with search the web. So this is similar to the bar there. Text box I showed you. You can now put in audio files. You can't create the audio files here in this document, but there are plenty of extensions you can add from the Chrome Web Store that make that very simple, and then they save it to your drive, and then you would just go here and upload them. I clearly don't have any at this point. I usually just create a video and then I upload the video. Of course, you can insert a video as well. Makes it very easy from YouTube. You could search right from here or by URL. I probably do this one more often than not. It just means I could go to a new website, find a video, on fractions, let's say. Fractions, and then I click video here, and then I only get videos. Here's the video I like. Perhaps I would preview it, of course. I would preview it and then make sure it was appropriate for what I wanted, and then I would click in here, highlight the URL, head back in here, and then I would just paste it in. I find it faster that way. And then in goes a video. I am often doing this. I'm often putting a border around it, make it look like it has that it's in a frame. You can certainly make those wider or thinner or dotted. It depends on what you like. I tend to keep them like so. And then I'm often putting, again, that drop shadow option there so that it looks neat. Angle 50 and distance 7 or 8, and then it looks like it's hovering there, especially if this is not so big. And you can kind of see how it looks like it's floating. It's a nice feature. Okay, and then inserting, then we have shapes, similar to before. Tables, I use this all the time. You can just choose what kind of table you want to create. It puts it right in there. Perhaps I will create a new, that's a cut. I'll put it on a different page just so that that's clear, so that it's not too busy here. Control V is paste. And then of course you can write in each one of these. I'm often changing the background color with paint so that it looks like something else. Maybe the first row might even be a different color, and then I populate it. I'm pretty sure I can, change this to a different color. Yeah, sure enough, there it is, different color, and then that would be my header row, and then you start adding data. Okay, and so a couple of other features here. Where am I? Insert. A chart. This uses Google Sheets where you can make graphs and charts. That's a very handy little tool. We're going to get into that in another day. Diagrams. If you want to be able to notice, it opened up this diagram pane on the side here, and you can take a look through all the different ones that you might see and have some different choices. And some of these actually can look very, very cool and how you organize things. And of course, you can write in each one of these and create what you will. These diagrams can be really interesting and helpful, and they add a lot of color and interest. Okay, so that's a really neat, nifty tool. Word art. I love word art. This is new. It's not in Google Docs, but it is here. So for example, I just write the word teacher, and now from here I can grab different fonts. I can italicize them, bold them. I can let's bring that down here, remove some of this stuff so it's uncluttered. Okay, and then when you go here, you can also start playing with the color of the background. You could even make it, let's say here, you can again have format options, make that drop shadow again, a 7, let's say, and angle 50, whatever you like. And then you can even change the background color of that. Maybe it's yellow. That is not even visible. Green, oh, don't like that at all. There's a purple. And you can create word art that looks very interesting to students. Because Google Docs does not yet have word art, you could create the word art here and then do something called a screenshot. I use Awesome Screenshot all the time, capture, and then select area, and then you literally highlight it, and then that will create something you can copy, and then you can that turns it into a picture, and then now this is a picture. I cannot edit this, but this one I can, right? So that's my workaround to be able to use Google Word, or sorry, Word Art in Google Docs. Okay, nifty feature. And then of course lines, which I talked about, animations, we already talked about those. Ooh, Link, I love this. This is actually this tool. This is one of the best tools out there. Anything you click, whether it be this box or the words or the table, you can essentially put a link, insert link into that document, which means embed it. So if I went anywhere else, maybe this video, any website or any file in your Google Drive, you click on that object, hit that link like so, and you paste it in there, and now that is an embedded link. And then when the students are working through this, they click on it, it'll take them to that website. This is a huge tool that I use all the time creating. This is essentially what makes it a hyperdoc, and allows students to go all over the place, and you can have much more control over their learning. Let's talk about the one right beside that here is comment tool. We already did, but the crop, it allows you essentially to change the size or cut off essentially the picture. I use that all the time. You can just double click on it as well, and then that makes it go, allows you to crop it. Okay, and so that's a big tool. This is a really neat one that I like, is this little drop down menu beside the crop. You can put any picture inside any object. Okay, and notice how teacher is now in an arrow. Okay, if you like ovals, okay, let me find an oval for you. Oh, there's a pentagon. Okay, put it in a pentagon. Any shape that you have here as a choice, you can put it in there. I like call-out boxes. That's a good one too. Okay, and so now the teacher is in a call-out box. So that is a really neat feature that I've discovered recently. I'm most often doing it with rounded circles like that, or if I put a border around it, you'll see it. Rounded circles like that, it just makes it look nice. Anyway, so that's a really neat feature. And then reset an image. That makes sense. It'll go back to the way it was. We could replace this image. Don't often use that, or animate it and then format it. And then, so that was in the insert. That's everything here. You could put slide numbers in. That's a good one, where as soon as I click that, do I want to skip title slide? No. I'll just hit go, and then notice it puts a number at the bottom corner there of each of these slides. 3, and then there's 1 on that one. So, but I think I accidentally deleted that. So I'm wondering what happens if I put it in there again. It didn't go back, so maybe you just hit undo 2 times. There it is. Okay, there's my 4. Okay, that's the power of the undo button. And then new slides, it's just a shortcut button where you insert a new slide. So that's very redundant. Okay, jumping into format. All this stuff is straight. It's basically on your bar, your text color. If I clicked in my table here, I think this would come, your text crossouts. I use that sometimes, and superscript and subscript, making those numbers a little bit smaller. Size, color, capitalization. You can play with all of that. Alignment. This is all of this stuff here. Alignment, spacing, bullets, and this is spacing between between these words or letters. So if I wanted that to space out more, notice it's spaced out. So this is all about that kind of formatting. If I was in this table, then I could insert rows, columns, delete rows, distribute rows, which means spread them out if you have data in there. So notice I'd spread it out, literally. Make that smaller. So it just spreads it out. I would probably just grab a corner and spread it out. But there's shortcuts for everything. And then there's clear formatting. If something gets complicated and you're like, this isn't working, you can highlight a section, hit clear formatting, and the background data gets eliminated, so that you just have, just plain text, for example, and then you can start building on it again. I don't use it very often. It's not necessary very often. And then this stuff about borders, which is already here on this toolbar here. Okay. And I think format options and format image, especially if I choose an image, that helps. Image options, crop, replace, and those are on the type bar because I use them so often. All right, slides, new, skip, that sort of thing. I never skip. If I want to skip something, I'll delete it. Change background, transitions. Transitions is between slides. Motion is with things in each slide. Where did I see motion? It's in here somewhere. Anyway, it doesn't matter at the point, but that's the difference between the two. Okay, so transitions is between slides. Okay, and then theme edit and change theme. Arrange. I find everything in this arrange is findable if I just right click. And I think on a Chromebook it might be Control click or a 2-finger tap on the pad. But if you do a right click or 2-finger tap, order the pictures matters. You can sometimes bring them to front or bring it forward, send back, or send to back. So that if I bring it over here, notice teacher is behind that table. If I wanted it to come to the front, I would say bring to front, and then now it's in front of the table. So I use those kinds of things all the time. Okay. And what else do I have here? Trying to be thorough, yet try to use time wisely. Spelling, big cool tool. I use that all the time. I would choose to have it underlined. That way I get to fix my own errors. I learn better that way. Explore, that is, notice this same button here. If I click on that, that comes up. That's the Explore tool. Linked objects. Well, look, every object that has a link, it basically highlighted it. I only have one. Okay. And then dictionary, that makes good sense. Q&A history, if you do a live presentation to students, you have the option of turning on their ability to ask questions while you're presenting. Probably not something you're going to use very often. I have never used it with my students. Voice type speaker notes. So as I talk and present, it'll write down everything I say so people can read it later. Not something I use in my context. Script editor, for those of you who are coders, you might want to know how to do that. I never mess with that. Preferences can be helpful. Auto detect links, smart quotes. I just leave all this stuff on. Auto fit. You can make it auto fit when you make a box bigger or smaller. If you want it to auto fit, feel free to play with that and see what difference it makes. I usually don't bother with it. But everyone has their own preferences. And then accessibility settings, you can do some scanning here, turn on screen reader support, turn on screen magnifier support. If your kids, have trouble seeing, that sort of thing, these could be something you want to play with and see if it's helpful for them. And then activity dashboard. I tend to not do this a whole lot, but it shows who is looking at your stuff and who's opening it and, sharing history and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Some details that often people don't look at ever. Okay. And then add-ons. This is, you should definitely go get the Pear Deck add-on. You basically go to get add-ons. You will probably do this with your students if you ever do an interactive lesson. Find Pear Deck, click on this one, install it. For me, the choice is uninstall because I already did install it. So you should definitely install that one. Any add-ons go into this add-on section. Kaizen is okay. They have some basic features, but then they want you to pay money. So this might not be something, unless your ministry pays for it. Definitely, if it's available there, play with it. It allows, it definitely helps in learning and teaching somehow. But it's not something that I've used extensively. So you may need to just play there yourself to see how well Kaizen works for you in your context. Okay, so let's give it a try. Open Kaizen. Now that I've given its permission, usually you have to go in there twice. Opens up a sidebar here. Okay, and they've welcomed me, and now it's just asked me some questions about who I am. I'm definitely a teacher. I would have to find my school and on, but I don't want to spend more time here. Okay, you'll have to play with that on your own. And then, so that's add-ons. Definitely a lot of cool stuff can happen there. And then a help menu. If you need help learning anything, notice keyboard shortcuts. If you're into that, that can definitely save you time if you start learning keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so I think that's all of it. Definitely a lot of tools to be able to make cool learning environments, and we're going to dive into this more deeply later. But for today, you're just creating that assignment, a welcome a PowerPoint presentation, well, a Google slide presentation for your students on your first day. Perhaps giving them information about who you are, your classroom norms, how they should behave, maybe showing them about your family or your school or history or whatever you would tell your students on your first day of class. All right. Anyway, find the assignment in Google Classroom. All right. Thank you very much.